So up next, Bridget. So I think we have the last session of the day. I guess that's going to be a panel discussion. So over to you, Bridget.
Thank you very much, Naveen. And yes, dear participants, we do have our very last panel discussion of the day, themed as XR impacting industrial manufacturing at Industry 4.0, a very important discussion topic for all of us. And all our well-renowned panelists have been kind enough to patiently wait. I feel really honored to introduce our eminent panelists, starting off with Mr. René Schulte. He is the Director, Research and Innovation at Valorem Reply. Then we have our second eminent panelist, Mr. Ferhan Ozkan. He is the co-founder of XR Bootcamp. Then we have our very eminent panelist, Mr. Sem Yildirim. He is the senior AR, VR, IoT developer at Coca-Cola CCI. And then we have Ms. Cecile Tezenas du Montcel. She is the VR head Europe at HP Inc. And we have our last eminent panelist, Mr. Simon Jackson. He is the mixed reality architect at XRealityLabs, United Kingdom. And last but not the least, we have our eminent panel moderator, Mr. Marc Winkleman. He is the Global Director, IWS Manufacturing Excellence at Procter & Gamble. Over to you, Marc, and apologies for the delay, dear panelists.
So thank you for your kind introduction and welcome to everybody. So you have heard today a lot of what is possible. What we will do in the forum is to take you one step back and talk with you through how to create the foundations of digital success. And that digital success is independent of what type of digital tools you are implementing. Let's see. As digital is crucial for every business success, you need to create the right foundation to make sure that each digital solution is effectively used in your organization. And let me share in some slides in how my company creates that foundation, and then we talk further about that in the panel. So why is digital so important? So the first reason is to eliminate effort. The thinking is that all repetitive, predictable work can be replaced by digitization and automation. And that helps our people to focus on exceptions and problem solving as time has become available to do that work as effort has reduced. Secondly, we need to use the various digital tools so we can see our problems with the insight from data that is collected by those various digital tools. And a great example is this camera. Our factory lines run with just few unplanned stops per day. And that means an unplanned stop is 2 seconds. So it is very hard to define the root cause by just watching a line and trying to solve it. But by using this camera and using other digital tools, we can see the unplanned stops for example, 1 week in a row, and that gives you the insight why the machine failed. And if you combine that with the various virtual reality tools, which I show later, it gives you great opportunities to solve the problem and define the operational standards needed to eliminate that issue forever. And finally, the digital tools help us to structure work process in a way that there is only one way to do that work, and that is standard work. And that's very important. For each digital solution we implement, we can simply not afford to have similar type of solutions for the same use in our company. And that standardization of culture, work process, tools is delivered by integrated work systems, from which I'm leading for my company. And that's P&G's operational excellence program, which we also license out together with our partner, Ernst & Young Consultancy. And by having this standardization across our sites, we also generate the same digital expectations from all our sites, so we can invest in one corporate suite of digital tools, be it the traditional tools like you see here on the screen, or be it XR, which I will show you in 1 minute. And those tools are developed by our teams. They do fit the actual work. And that might look like a slow process, but we have learned that that's much more faster as user adoption is already done while we develop the tool. And to support our teams with their IBS work, we have defined applications which we as corporate support. And that's valid for every digital solution. So let's look at it. This virtual cave helps to build our equipment and sites the first time right. Another application use advanced tools to check our product quality. As we produce, for example, pampers at 1,000 pampers a minute, you cannot see it anymore. And the line is managed with a digital cockpit, which you will see in the next slide. By receiving information from some 1,500 sensors and cameras, every trend deviation is noticed and then worked by the operating team. And all the data is then feedback to our digital systems and our virtual reality systems. Next one is inspections. So you can use virtual tools to avoid checklist of papers. Just look at the right spot at the screen and you can see what it should be. We also create systems to look at our maintenance and then create a flawless system between customer orders and material delivery at the line. So all work which we do to avoid that humans have to do it, so we can use those humans to solve issues. And very useful during COVID is the next one. So it is looking at the machine from different sides. So what you see here. So people in Manchester can be supported by the experts which are working in Germany, and that we use both for maintenance but also for training. And finally, by running optimization, we can manage our storeroom and maximize our service and reduce cost and inventory. To do that, it is important that we train our people, as already said by one of the previous speakers, because otherwise you can never exploit your IT investments. And we have created trainings for our top leadership to envision what is possible, for our middle management to enable them to know what is possible today, and for our technicians to make sure that they can use the tools in a perfect way. So that was my very short explanation of what P&G is doing in this area, because I want to spend more time on the panel. I will just stop my video now. Stop sharing. Where do I do that? It's here. And to be fair, I never worked with Zoom, so I don't know how to unshare this stuff. Can you do that from your side, Bridget?
Yes, certainly. Please allow us a minute.
Okay, I will just ask the first question.
Yeah.
So looking at my presentation, we as company do some virtual reality, but listening to today's speeches, there's a lot of opportunity. René, so how do you see the impact of XR in manufacturing? And can you share some examples, please?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, by the way. Welcome, everyone. So what are some of the XR things that you can see in manufacturing? Well, first of all, XR, as you all know, it's virtual reality and augmented reality. And you see actually quite a few VR training solutions out there where you basically allow to train people, for example, first-line workers, like that work in manufacturing and they need to learn how to assemble certain things. You can train that already in VR. There are some good examples also for example, like maintenance tasks, right? When, for example, a car needs to be maintained, and especially in times of COVID, where it might be hard to travel to a certain location, to a training site, where you're doing the training on site, you can actually prepare already, you know, at home or like in another office in a virtual reality setting with the training. And so you can basically be prepared and go on site to do actual training with less time you need to spend there, because you're already, you know, prepared in the virtual reality world. But of course, you still need to do like real work with the real tools, right? But at least that helps quite a bit. Also, when we're looking more in the AR and MR market, augmented reality and mixed reality market, where you're augmenting the real world with virtual items, right? You see a lot of interesting things, especially in automotive. And so I'm from Germany, by the way. So, you know, German car makers here are heavily investing actually into AR, VR, and XR in general. And also, especially when it comes to remote assistance. So for example, with Microsoft HoloLens, you have this remote assist solution where you can, you know, provide remote support through a person that is not an expert, right? But the remote expert can see what the other person is saying, and they can provide some meaningful instructions to that person. And for example, a Mercedes-Benz has a 40% reduction in travel cost already using these kinds of solutions, right? Another interesting number is maybe to share is also not just in automotive, but also if you're looking at, you know, space companies and, for example, Lockheed Martin, also, of course, working in aerospace topics, right? And they have, for example, a certain module they're building, and they have to assemble it with, let me look it up. I think it's 36,000 fasteners. So they have, oh no, it's actually 57,000 fasteners. So a lot of fasteners, right? And what they did is, instead of using a manual overlay, they used the HoloLens to project a virtual overlay where all of these fasteners needs to be, you know, fastened on the module, if you will. And what they measured is they have a 90% touch labor reduction. So 90% time reduction for this touch labor intensive task, which basically means in numbers from an 8-hour, they reduce it to a 45-minute shift, right? Using augmented reality. And of course, as you can imagine, that's a huge cost saving factor there. And there's many, many more examples I could also share. For example, we also worked our own work we did at Reply with a car seat manufacturer, where we basically overlaid certain things that need to be put on a car seat, right? You see the virtual overlay, you put on these goggles, you see the virtual overlay, and that's much easier then to assemble, and you have higher throughput and so on. So a lot of
that are some great examples, and especially the first one resonates very well with me. Our pamper lines are costing tens of millions of dollars, so we can simply not afford to stop it for 2 hours to have an operator training. So we did exactly what you said, creating a virtual pamper line and having our people building the capability there. And that brings me to you, Ferhan. So can you share your thoughts on what is required as capabilities if you want to initiate this transformation to XR?
Thank you, Marc, and hello, everyone. It's nice to join here today. Yeah, I mean, in terms of the capabilities, actually, from our perspective, I'm working on an upskilling academy for professionals and enterprise and companies. And we always come to the question how I can start as a company, right? How I can start the transformation of my company towards the immersive future or immersive 4.0 transformation, especially for manufacturing and heavy industries. There are multiple ways, right? Either you can outsource everything, right? There you can find a solution provider. You can outsource everything there without even having maybe one even creator or developer in your team. Or you can maybe have everything in-house. So all your developer and all your VR AR capabilities, development capabilities are positioned inside your company. That's also possible. And the third option is the hybrid option, that you basically have the key roles inside your company, especially the ones which is related with the product development and the ones that is a little bit on the strategy side, and the development is being outsourced in a hybrid model. So we are helping all these three kind of companies who would like to start or even empower their existing immersive 4.0 transformation. But there are several tricks that I would like to mention very quickly, especially the biggest challenge that we see right now is companies who would like to start this transformation bring people with limited knowledge, especially on the technical side, on the prototyping side. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit later, but this brings a lot of problems. We are working with many heavy industry companies, oil, gas, energy, like system integrators, and space industry, defense industry. And what we see that, especially if the person who is even outsourcing everything, but the decision maker is a little bit less knowledgeable, this creates a huge problem when you are even creating a strategy, transformation strategy, but also even writing a RFP, like request for proposal or brief for the outsourcing agency or solution provider. Even selection of the outsourcing platforms or companies are extremely important, because there are hundreds of them out there, and you may need to select the one that fits to your budget, that fits to your need. So we strongly recommend companies to have at least basic development and technical knowledge in at least in one or two person, to make sure that these people can actually write a request, an official request for the outsourcing companies. That is the biggest thing that I can tell for those who want to start their transformation.
Thank you. That's very clear and very insightful. And to be fair, we have exactly the same strategy. The reason why we focus so much on having our lines running without any unplanned stops is that it allows our operators to do exactly what you said. So being involved in all those type of technology projects, because if they develop it and if they master it, we know that the use of those tools will be much more effective. And secondly, on top, attracting people into manufacturing is quite hard. So if we would just be a traditional manufacturing organization, we would simply not attract talent anymore. And that brings me then to the next point. So we talked a little bit about penetration. We talked about what is needed from organization capability. So let's try to understand the advantages. So Sam, can you share what you believe are the competitive advantages to use this type of tools?
Yeah, thank you, Mark. It's great to be here, and hello, everyone. So when we come to the competitive advantages of this and disadvantages of the immersive technologies here, firstly, we have to talk about the boundaries. With AR and VR technologies, we are breaking all the boundaries and all the borders around us. In my company, we're mostly getting benefit of the remote assistance that René already talked about. Because when you are in a multi-regional company, you have a lot of audits or a lot of maintenance needs, and that's when you cover with this with the augmented reality technology, it creates you a lot of value inside. And on the other hand, we have when we talk about the trainings, it's also breaking the limit, because when you try to do something about the employee health and safety, you need scenarios. And in real life, you cannot do all the scenarios because of the health and security. So the VR environment provides us this. So we can create any scenarios like fire or earthquake or whatever, and we can simulate everything and prepare great trainings and measure everything with the XR technology. And we're talking about the Industry 4.0, and of course, supply chain is the biggest part of this. And when you start to communicate between shop floor and the operational part, quick responses and hands-free interactions are coming on the table, and they are providing us great efficiency on the workforce. So we're reducing the number of trainings needed, and we're measuring the trainings better. And then during the maintenance or other operations, we have the ability to get the reactions quickly and see what's going on the field. So with the digital twin integrations or AI integrations, you get all the data within your hands, and literally on your hands or on your glasses. And
great example.
And when we talk about the Industry 4.0, everything is data-driven right now. So every company is working on data-driven models, and VR and AR creates the data for you also at the same time. So these are.
I think one way how we used it in our company also was, for example, with project execution. So how can you reduce the lead time of installing a new line by just playing it first in the virtual world? Because then you see, it's not all about big things. It was simply also about things. Can it simply go through the door? So that you don't get stuck on half a centimeter.
Yeah, and we can have the special collaboration between other departments and find the best solution. And lastly, I want to talk about a great use case. Huawei tried the 5G connection with a surgery operation. And okay, this was a test of the 5G operation in the world, but the best part for me is without the VR environment, there will not be any ability to do it with a flat screen or something else. So the doctors has to be in the same room and feel everything. And that was a great use case for 5G and VR together. So thank you for your question.
I hope the patient agreed up front before you started, but sounds very good. So clearly there are some big advantages. And that brings me to the question, so what to implement? So Simon, based upon your experience, so which technology will take the lead? Mixed reality, augmented, virtual, or a mix of both? Can you give us some insights on that?
Yeah, I mean, what we're finding, especially in the industry, is that a lot of people, the questions people keep asking is, what should they focus on? Is the future augmented, the future virtual? The likes of Facebook and Niantic seem to have very opposing views to what is the sort of next generation, really. And what we find is it comes down to, it depends on the use case. There is no one silver bullet. There isn't no one way to resolve it. And there's always this competition between what is enterprise and what is consumer. That's sort of trying to drive the market. I mean, ultimately, what will set the future forward realistically is the hardware. Without the technology, without the devices, the things to actually drive these things forward, it will help shape those kind of capabilities are there, because like the HoloLens is fantastic, it's a fairly expensive piece of kit, and opens up so many avenues in the augmented space of how to work with things both in person and remotely. Whereas the likes of the Oculus Quest, especially with Meta now dropping their business brand or budget on this, so actually the retail device now becomes accessible to business, gives a more VR way of then accepting it into it. But again, these are still opposing situations where we're trying to drive down one way, trying to drive down the other, where a lot of people are now trying to balance the fact that in this truly XR world, there is a sliding scale. And again, it comes down to the use case. Does my use case in building training suit more augmented or virtual? Does my manufacturing instance have virtual or augmented? And what we find is that in a lot of cases, it's a bit of both. You're not really building for any kind of one universe. You're building to, well, in this use case, in this, what I'm trying to do, this is what fits there. But also similarly, in case of this solution also then works on the other end of the scale. We have this in training, in manufacturing, in a lot of other places where we are becoming shrinking down to one world. And we want, the whole aim now is that we want more people into the same scenarios and trying to work on the different solutions. And a good example of this, which actually surprised me when we found out, is that surgeons who are now starting to have more augmented headsets, and you think, so first instance, everyone thinks, right, well, you want to augment the surgery, you want to put all these devices out and things like that. But the feedback we got from the surgeons was that what they wanted more was like some of the remote assist or the other people on the call, seeing what that person's seeing, offering advice. And the biggest advantage to that was the surgeon themselves, where it actually reduced their stress working in an actual surgery, knowing the fact that they had experts eventually on hand, seeing what they're seeing, assisting with that surgery without kind of intervening or getting in the way. And so we see like in a lot more collaborative scenarios where all these different technologies are coming together to try and address what those common things we find are there and ultimately helping everybody.
It's a very wise advice. It's exactly what we do in my company. So we always go for the losses. So that doesn't mean, that does mean that we don't have all the high-tech sexy solutions, but it's a very robust, stable, proven system. There is no need as a business to be the front runner. You need to be successful. You need to invest where you need the money. Cecile, you're looking at it from a different point of view, seeing your role in your company. So what would you add to the technology options Simon just shared with us?
Yeah, so thanks for inviting me here, and thanks for the question, Marc. I don't think I will have a different opinion. I would agree with Simon that the usage of technology is really depending on the use case. We at HP, obviously, we do VR, but we see VR and AR very complementary technology. It's not one being the future of the others. We really see both going in parallel and really depending on the use case. I used to say to our customer, you don't have to choose either VR or AR. You can choose VR and AR. That to me the big difference. I would say VR, because it's you are immersive in a completely virtual world. There is no distraction. It's imprinted in your brain as it was a real experience memories. So it's really the best learning tool. And if you imagine having super immersive and super high resolution experience, you can be training a pilot, or you can be training a speaker or sales to do public speech. So you can do a lot of soft skills and hard skill training in VR. So that's where we see VR as a good tool. And AR, as we said, because you can imprint additional information to the real world, can be a very good assistant and support for operation.
Can you give me an example of how you use it as a soft skill? So what is
Yeah, soft skill, it's very interesting, and it's something also that is used for in the industry, actually. The first time you will think about VR, it's probably for manufacturing training or manual task, but for soft skills, it's also very interesting features when you can imagine being an avatar. We have some partners that are developing CGI content with avatars when you can practice public speech, for example.
Okay.
And when they're using, we do have one headset that is measuring your bioanalytic sensor data. So they're measuring your pulse, measuring your eyes, movement, etc. So when you get all this information,
Okay.
you can imagine you are in front of an audience and virtual audience, you are doing your pitch with language analytics. This application can tell you what did you wrong, what did you well, and you can improve your public pitch.
That's interesting. So that's something I surely can use myself, as I do a lot of speeches.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. I did it.
We also use the same type of technique. We also we have how you call it, test stores, and we do the same. Like, so how can you see whether we have a £1 discount? Should it be yellow? Should it be red? Should it be big? Should it be small? Should it be high? Should it be low? And we do exactly what you said. We let people walk through that shop, create all the different scenarios, and just see where is the eye movement going on, and where do we see that the heart is making an extra beat. And it's the same kind of logic. That's also kind of soft, because you try to measure people's emotions.
Yeah, we do have some customer doing what we call marketing research. So if you want to test different design scenarios, let's say a car, you want to see if this button is better here or there, you make 3 different scenarios, and you will see in real doing tests with customers what they prefer.
Yeah.
So that's
interesting. Good, thank you. So that's very interesting. And I think you always start this type of work with a prototype, because you need to start small to be able to make it big afterwards. So Ferhan, are there any specific XR prototyping development skills that engineers need to acquire to be successful in the manufacturing world or heavy industry world?
Yeah, actually, this is something that we have been experimenting for the last maybe half a year, and it's going actually pretty well, because the skills that as an engineer that you may have is probably your subject matter expertise, right? Like in terms of manufacturing, or if you are in a heavy industry, oil, gas, energy related stuff. So think of like that. If we bring a VR developer or metaverse developer, whatever you call it, and try to teach engineering skills, how long will it take, right? It will take a few years from that perspective. So what we thought of, what if we have actually engineers in place learning VR development skills, at least into the prototyping level. This doesn't mean that they have to learn all the VR software development and become a software architect, but at least they somehow be able to bring their use cases into reality in a real-time 3D engine like Unity or Unreal. Then it will be an actually amazing boost for the industry transformation. So companies like Accenture, Deloitte, Lockheed Martin, Aramco, Harvard University, Carnegie Mellon University, they are sending their researchers and developers to our beginner level, prototyping level, or advanced level programs. And the reason that they would like to do that, because the people who is joining us already have their subject matter expertise in terms of design, engineering design, UI design, UX design. So what if you also take VR prototyping, XR prototyping skill on top of your engineering skill, and you create your use cases in a self-capable way. I think this is for us, this is the small trick that we can give to the audience today that really works very well. And even if you are an enterprise, not an XR solution provider company, and without any VR AR development skills, if you get this prototyping mindset, you can still, as we discussed with Marc, you can still select your outsourcing partners, solution providers, system integrator, whoever you want to work with, and guide them accordingly in a knowledgeable way, right? Because
and I think in my company, the other reason why we are so focused on having one corporate IT structure is to do what you say. So if all factories are running from the same IT platform, with the same IT tools, with the same IT apps, it means that you suddenly create a lot of experts in the company because they all can help each other without the need for training, without the need to understand the system. But Cecile, looking at this was besides the people capability, are there other accelerators or blockers for XR adoption? So can you help me with my understanding? We cannot hear you. You're on mute.
Yeah, I was on mute. Sorry for that. Yeah, so for sure. I think, I mean, we have seen that all over the day. I mean, VR it's not a new technology. We have seen headset from 40 years ago. What is new is that it's moving out of the niche it was and becoming more popular, used by the very large technologies and very large companies. And of course, having the Meta and Microsoft and all the large SI being involved, it's making it more popular and creating compelling use case. I think what will accelerate the adoption of VR, the first thing is the awareness, so having more and more use case IDs, example, and proven ROI. To give you an example, the fact that I mentioned soft skills, it's probably it may be new for some people in the audience, and we see customers, they started with VR in mechanical training things, and more they spread out. So we see more and more use case to see that there is basically no limit of the application. The accelerator will also come from the SI. So we have seen Accentures, we have PwCs, we have a lot of system integrators that are developing groups and teams with high knowledge to help industry to develop their software, their AR, VR strategy, because it may scare some companies to jump in this. I've seen some customer who purchase a box of HTC Vive or of HoloLens. They have no clue what to do with it. So I think it's very important to have to see the system integrator growing their skills.
Okay.
Having more and more software and standardization of this software. Having the large players of that, Microsoft making it more standard will help.
Okay.
And I see the blockers still for enterprise use case, probably all what is around security, data privacy, protection of the users, and also all what is traditional for IT-driven companies, so deployment, MDM, and management of the tools that are, I think, for the moment, blockers. We see at HP ORUs, we are a big IT company, and we know that on PC, which is a mature market, has a different way to be managed. Today, VR and AR are not integrated in the corporate IT.
Okay, thank you.
At some point will be the breaking point.
Very clear. Talking about breaking points, Simon, so do you have any other specific considerations to promote the use of mixed reality in an enterprise? Are there any areas where you see the biggest growth or business value? You're on mute.
My bad. Some of the common misconceptions is the fact that everyone sees like, oh, there's this big solution or there's the big thing to change, where in reality, the biggest advantage we see in XR are in the small, in the micro scale kind of changes that can help to evolve and grow business. So the fact that having small iterative changes to supplement other workflows and then slowly introduce it usually gets a lot of friction with the bigger solutions trying to change or suddenly do this rapid business alteration where people then either are restrictive to it, or it's because of the old phrase of this is how we've always done it, it always gets hit home. Whereas a slow iterative process of introduction helps business because you're making almost the introduction of XR additive, improving things slowly and adding things on, which again is the old adage from how business better evolves by making small micro changes. XR is no different in this aspect because you want to sort of a case of, well, there's this process, we can make it quicker. Whether it's taking things that can take a long time, where you're getting lots of people together in a short period of time into a physical space, where we're now using more technology to try and say, well, keep things separate, especially post-pandemic, and bringing them together virtually, as you've shown, there's been shown in some of the previous sessions, where having virtual workspaces or virtual meeting rooms. So that means that people don't have to travel, they don't have to get into places, and it makes their lives easier. And those kind of things make it easier for XR adoption in the industry, bringing in what were complicated scenarios for getting people together into smaller sessions that people can then effectively spread their time out better, rather than just having these big global changes that are pushing things down.
Yeah, that's, I think, one of the few blessings of COVID, that a lot of barriers have been teared down, because there was simply no other way to do it anymore, as there was no physical contact allowed. Exactly what you said, like your virtual meeting. Like before, I was flying every, let's say, second week. I've not been in an airplane in 2 years, and we are still in business. Well, before that was unthinkable. So great insight. Sam, so it seems that we have everything what is needed available. There is a huge potential. So do you think XR technology and use case industry are growing fast enough, or can it accelerate?
Well, the answer to this question is yes and no. We have to split the question into two. In technical part, the development part is growing really, really fast, and resources and number of people involved are increasing, and it is promising. And on the other hand, the companies who are in manufacturing of wearables or other technologies that we're using in XR, they are doing a great job. But we have blockers. So one of them is the battery life, because it's already limited for the entire industry. And from my point of view, the hardest part for us, for the AR VR developers, is the content side, because content is not growing so fast, and the quality of image and the content we're giving to the end user is everything in AR and VR. In principle, we are a visualization tool. So the no part of the question is about the content generation, but the yes part is the techniques, devices, and costs are growing very fast, and costs are getting lowering. And in the point of an enterprise, you have to look for a cost benefits point of view. And now it's balancing more. And in the upcoming years, I hope the benefits will grow faster with the new coming players on the field, new investments, and the new generation is more familiar with the device, because we have the adoption problem also on the field. So our generation got all the technologies around. Now we're adapting a lot of things, but the next generation developers and next generation youth is coming already adapted to the new technologies, and hopefully they will increase increase the growing and make us faster to reach a better future in XR.
Yeah, and I think one good example is, I know that 2 years ago we were very rigid on no cell phones on the production floor. Well, if you now want to attract people, you need to figure out a way how to use those cell phones on the production floor in an effective way. Because it's the way how my children are living. If you tell them to put away the cell phone, it doesn't work. And I think with XR, it will go in the same direction. It's maybe small right now, but it will grow significantly. The biggest barrier I see myself is the infrastructure outside our office buildings. Looking at the infrastructure we put in the factory, we put 3 times in the factory what we thought was needed. And currently we're out of space on our internal webnet. But then we can make that bigger, but then the city around us cannot handle the speed. So I think that's another big barrier. If everybody starts to use all these virtual tools, how that would work. And that brings me to the next one. So to René. So we saw metaverse, and I can imagine metaverse will be an enormous data eater. And we saw how it was playing an important role in the consumer area. And because the previous speaker was all talking about games and things like that.
Exactly.
So how will it work in the industry? Do you see a similar kind of revolution? And can you give some examples about that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And like you mentioned, like a lot of the the things you see related to metaverse are these like large virtual worlds aimed for consumers, right? And maybe let's break down what is the metaverse. In a sense, it's a network of computers connecting with each other, where you have these virtual experiences with 3D and other related media. Some say it's the new kind of the immersive internet, right? Where basically websites become 3D interactive spaces, right? So that's a general way. And like I said, if you look at Meta, formerly known as Facebook, they're building also these large virtual worlds that you can access in VR, but also with a classic means like a 2D desktop. But for an enterprise perspective or manufacturing in particular, of course, that is less relevant. What we're looking more is this kind of enterprise metaverse. And you look at companies like NVIDIA with their Omniverse platform, where they're basically bringing all these heterogeneous tooling together with open connectivity. Or another example is what I call the real world metaverse, right? And Satya Nadella from Microsoft, he actually put it really well in a nice quote where he said, I think that the entire idea of the metaverse is fundamentally this: increasingly, as we embed computing in the real world, you can even embed the real world in computing. And that really nails it down. What I think, especially in manufacturing world, is much more interesting in terms of metaverse. You get this digital content layer on top of the physical world. You have all of your IoT sensors. You have all of your computer vision that can, analyze your environment, that can sense, okay, there's a wall, there's a ceiling, that can sense the environment you're currently in. And if you combine all of that, you have this real world, if you will, you have a digital twin of the whole world, right? And that's your real world metaverse layer on top of the real world. And with this, you can do some pretty interesting things. For example, you can implement wayfinding, indoor wayfinding, to very small precision, right? In a centimeter range precision. You can navigate somewhat.
What did you talk about? What was in very small precision there? Wayfinding, I understood.
Yeah, wayfinding, like think about indoor navigation, right? So there's, for example, there's a broken machine, like, okay, that broken machine needs to be fixed, right? And so your field service worker needs to understand, first of all, where's that machine, where do you need to go? And if you have these so-called spatial anchors, because you have this content layer, right? You have the understanding of the environment, thanks to all of these devices that sense the world, you can create a digital map, a computer vision map, not a GPS map, but a computer vision map. And that gives you precision in a centimeter range or 10 centimeter range, depending on your environment. But with this, you can build very precise indoor navigation solutions that don't rely on any radio signals like Wi-Fi, beacons, whatever. They rely on computer vision. So they will recognize the space you're in because you have this digital content layer, this real world metaverse, and then you can navigate. You can tell the user where they need to go with overlays in AR. And that provides a lot of interesting capabilities. For example, also, we build our own digital twin solution, right? Where we have a digital twin of a real factory, which you can see in virtual reality, but also you can scale it up a 1-to-1 size. So you can dive into that. You can dive into this real world capability there, and then gives you a lot of return of investment because you can solve certain things faster because you identify them faster and can resolve them as well. One last thing is also interesting. So I mentioned this real world metaverse, right? Where we have this real world layer on top of our current world. But of course, there's also this full virtual world. And those are also interesting for enterprise and corporate metaverse customers. So if you look at things like Microsoft Teams or like Zoom, what we're using here and other collaboration tools, they're also tapping into the extended way of providing a metaverse solution. Just recently, they announced Mesh for Teams, which basically brings in a gateway into the metaverse to 250 million users that use Microsoft Teams today. And so you can enable these kind of virtual spaces that you have in Teams. So instead of us just having this kind of conversation here, we could be in a virtual setting. And this is enabled for all Teams users next year, right? And so you give that into the hand of many, many corporate users. And this is just the beginning. And I think the real power comes from as we embed the real world in computing, and we can take advantage of that with the metaverse.
Yeah, and I can imagine. So in an example, what we do in our company with your example is having a virtual production line and understand how fast we can run it before the next equipment would fail. It requires an enormous amount of data from the line, which in my company we have available. But then you can do exactly what you said without spending time on the line. You can go to the optimal setting where the line is just at breakthrough, and also learn over time what is the right setting, because it will fail at a certain moment and you will see that the parameters going down. Very interesting. I think with this, we have completed the panel. You saw it is a great opportunity, but it also requires a great foundation to make sure that you make effective use of your XR investment dollars. So thanks to René, to Ferhan, to Sam, to Simon and Cecile to join, and back to Naveen.
Yes,
Thank
Mark,
you.
thanks so much there for moderating the panel. In fact, yeah, a lot of takeaway. So yes, Bridget, over to you.
Well, I would quickly like to thank our eminent panelists, René, Sam, Simon, Ferhan, Cecile, and you, Marc, for your time, your patience, and your knowledge on XR. Thank you for your support, and you all have a good day ahead.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
You too.